I have come to call you to the mountaintop of Himalaya. To send forth the call that your heart will respond to, so that you will have the magnet of the devotion to God that is contained in my call from my heart, spurring you on, giving you the courage, the strength, the God direction to establish enough momentum in every aspect of your life that will be your rock. For without the momentum of the light carrying you to the heights of consciousness that you require, that you desire, there will not be the rolling momentum to carry you over the crags of the jagged rocks, of the deep crevices, of the abysses that you must shun and fly over in the consciousness of the mind of God. Those areas of life that are daunting to some when not prepared with sufficient light, but child's play to others that have seen those obstacles as unreality and have garnered sufficient training, testing, and the light of God in the storehouse of their chakras, their consciousness, to know what is true and right, what is the God direction. When you stand in the midst of all chaos in the world, can you maintain peace, harmony, God resolve to stay the course of your mission? First and foremost, the number one mission that you are to carry out is to embody the light. For all else fails in the absence of light. You can have all manner of intellect, but without the light, establishing a consciousness of wisdom that displaces the human mind with divine wisdom, there cannot be the sowing of the seeds of the divine plan that you are to fulfill. Along your journey, you may receive glimpses of your divine plan. But it will not be the whole of your mission. For the Presence knows wisely that were you to have the fullness of understanding of what you were to accomplish before taking your ascension in the light, you would be your worst enemy, doubting yourself, confounding the natural course that you would follow under the guidance of your mighty I Am Presence, with the assistance of the ascended masters, with the angelic kingdom guarding you and protecting you along the way. You, blessed hearts, will be filled with the possibilities of what in that moment you are to fulfill and be God victorious. But let your gaze cast aside into human creation. For too long, and you will find the momentum of the storehouse of light that you have garnered, the wisdom that you have attained, and the mastery that is already assured in this lifetime dwindle away until the reserves and the storehouse is empty. Blessed hearts, with the abundance of God that is all about, with the magnificence of your own God presence awaiting the opportunity for you to grasp the possibilities for your life. How could there be another decision? Anything of greater importance than your own God presence and the devotion to God? Yes, there are those in embodiment who think themselves devout, religious, attentive to their spiritual path. But that attentiveness only is given a small percentage of the time of their life. If you calculate the whole of that percentage throughout an entire embodiment and weigh it against the pursuit of unreality, absent the fires of God, you can begin to understand why so few ascend into the octaves of light. It is our hope, our desire, that there be many sons and daughters of God that will follow the magnet of the devotion to God in the many ascended and cosmic beings, the angelic kingdom, the Elohim, and their vast elemental forces of nature that hold to the perfection of infusing God in life. All this to assist you in, yes, the mundane things of life. Those tasks, responsibilities, all of which are in an order and a part of the path. For even in the smallest pursuit of fulfilling a particular task, you can discover many wisdoms that prevail, that will remind you of greater tasks that you are called to fulfill. And you will apply the same lessons learned. And wonder of wonders, there will be the victory of completion. Many times I have called you to my retreat. It is between you and your God presence. As to how many times you have petitioned your presence to come while you were sleeping at night, to be taught and tutored in the divine aspects of God that would allow you to greater understand the will of God, the devotions to God, the pathway to God. So I come once more, but with a little greater insistence that it is necessary for many of you to learn the lessons that you will receive at my retreat. Yes, there was a time when all were not invited. And even now, it will take the stalwart to accelerate the light in their vehicles of consciousness, sufficient to carry them all the way to the retreat. For a time there may be those that will be camped out at lower elevations of vibration, but in the striving and the desire of the heart, one day you will reach the door of the retreat, and you will be welcomed in with open arms. You will be rewarded for all of the striving merely by being in the presence of those who serve at my retreat. Blessed hearts, far too many meander about through life without direction, without a galvanizing of their energy into a focused awareness of what is most important that must be attended to. Surely, maintaining health and well-being to remain in embodiment is key, for after all, if you do not take care, you will shorten the very life opportunity of this incarnation before it otherwise might have occurred. And your presence will be required to set in motion the chain of events for another incarnation. And who's to say if you will reach the same opportunity in the same time frame as in this embodiment? So take care to protect your physical body, your emotional body, and your mental body. For as they are the hands and feet that your Holy Christ presence desires to utilize, they must be up to the task of whatever the requirement of your life stream. Many have great responsibilities because of returning karma. And as you have learned in the past, and will relearn again, should it be necessary, that balancing those karmas is all important to clearing away past debts that must be balanced so that you have the reserves of the life force required in your vehicles of consciousness to complete the tasks at hand at that moment, that day, that year of your journey. There are vows of commitment, some most important to the ascension in the light, that must be attended to, maintained, and held inviolate. While there are other vows and commitments that were made rashly, without wisdom, that should go into the flame, for they were not vows of the heart flame of your own God presence, but they were the musings of the human consciousness, emulating perhaps others, galvanized into momentum of others, but nonetheless not the vows and commitments that your mighty I Am Presence would desire to forever at the close of this lifetime keep feeding the light of God into. So you must become wise. You must have the discerning faculties of the mind of God to know where your allegiance lie. What is the course, the divine nature that your presence has sown into the fabric of your life that you must fulfill and maintain as that commitment and that vow? If it is not a vow and commitment by the heart flame of your own God presence that has been uttered, then, blessed ones, it can be transmuted. Ultimately, if there are entanglements, they can be changed. But the violet flame, the blue flame of the will of God, the white light of purity, and the devotions to God will illumine your consciousness as to what is the right course. What should you maintain as an activity of life? What is lawful? And how can you balance this commitment without harming life? Most delicate procedures. But in the mind of God, all things are possible. Many times you will not have the answer in your outer mind, and you will be required to have the illumination of God imparted to you as wisdom. Or if there is not sufficient attainment in your world to hear the voice of God, to discern the voice of God, then giving your presence permission to arrange the circumstances of your life, your karmic debts, transmute and bring a balance back of God direction in your life, as it was in the beginning and should be continued on in accordance with the will of God. And then you, as the devout initiate on the path to the heart of God, will be aware of the cycles and the timing, the currents, the open door that otherwise would not be there had your presence not arranged it. But be ready for change, for you have willingly, courageously surrendered to your presence to give you all that you require and all that the presence desires. Now that, blessed ones, is a great difference than telling God what God must do for you. In taking your stand and being bullish, rebellious, stubborn, and waiting for God to pry you from your stance, to change your life. When there is not the updraft of the flame upon the altar of your heart in the desire for God, to allow God to be the doer, there is not the ability, the movability, the changeability, the frequency of vibration receptive to the hand of God to perform the perfect work. So there are those that will tell God what God must do and then rail against God if it does not occur, not taking into consideration that the vehicles of consciousness must be prepared. There must be fluidity. There must be a magnet of love upon the heart that draws the light to then ripple out as energy of God direction, God power, God will, to emanate harmony sufficient in the vehicles of consciousness, so that there is not one alteration to that which is emanated through your vehicles of consciousness. And then wait upon the Lord. For only God knows the time and the cycle of the coming to be that is required. Oh, how subtle it can be. Should you be impatient, too anxious, you may miss the open door, the cycle of change required, or the opportunity handed to you by one or more of the ascended masters, an angel in your midst, or the circumstances that your presence has orchestrated to bring you into that perfect coincidence with forces that would guide you, direct you, and keep you in the flow of the will of your God presence. Life is so much more in the will of the presence than in the forcing and manipulation of the outer vehicles that so often has become the norm in the absence of understanding how close is the Holy Christ presence to integrating into one's life. Opportunity is missed. So throughout this cycle, and all cycles to come, when you rehearse our visitation on the top of the mountain of Himalaya, will you remember that you have the flame of God burning upon your heart? What is required of that flame is to expand, to be filled with more of God. To do so requires devotion to the God of your own mighty I Am presence, that heart flame that is intrinsically the nature of God, the I Am that I am. And when the ascended masters and cosmic beings come to release their teaching and instruction, their body consciousness, their fire, their momentum, you will drink it in so that you might be recharged, revivified, purified, and accelerated by their momentum to carry on and to venture out, yes, if you must, into the world of unreality to fulfill your tasks. But then return back to the retreat of the charge of light of the ascended and cosmic beings to be filled once more. And on the cycle may repeat until one day you discover your tasks are complete. And you will try at that moment to remember all the things that you were charged to remember at the time of your ascension. But wonder of wonders, you will discover that in that allness of the light that is beginning to stream forth into your outer vehicles, your finer bodies, building up and building up, you do not have to work anymore to remember what you needed to remember. For the mind of God is already at work, performing the perfect tasks to elevate your consciousness, to carry you through the final stages of resurrection's flame, transfiguration, and the ascension. Oh, because, blessed ones, in this hour, in the presence of Lord Himalaya, you made the discerning will of your consciousness, your emotional body, your physical body, to pursue the ascension in the light by climbing the path, that steep path of Christhood. For it is with the light of your Christhood, as this Christ presence adorns you, infuses you, activates and charges you, you are able to embody the virtues of the Christ. And what might have been habits that were not in keeping with that Christhood, they have dropped away as you were climbing the ascent. And those momentums of thought, of energies that you allowed to sit upon your chakras, they too had gone into the refiner's fire. And you cannot even at that moment recall what some of those were, for they are gone. The very record of them are gone, and you are left with the good thoughts, the holy thoughts, the pure and beautiful thoughts. You have harmony within your emotional body and a charge of God consciousness that cannot be denied. And there is no longer a concern in your life for what may occur on the next moment. You are under the God control of the light of your God presence. And therefore, as you journey on, you are secured in knowing the hand of God is at work, for you have surrendered to that hand. You have surrendered to the mind of God, the heart of God. And you are not lesser for it, you are greater for it, for you are filled with purpose and divine intent. This, blessed ones, is the path that is before you as the Godhead charioteer. If this is your first introduction to these teachings, I commend you for hearing the inner call, for that is why you have heard this instruction, and I can only pray to the flame upon the altar of your heart that you will attend to every word and every teaching, so that the flame upon the altar of your heart will expand sufficiently to galvanize you into a greater resolve to know your mighty I Am presence, and to come to this altar to receive the blessing that is here for you. Throughout the cycle, I, Himalaya, will be present in this room, at this altar, for every release, to lend my momentum to your life stream, to attend to the instruction, to the light, and the body consciousness that is prepared for you by dispensation from the ascended masters and cosmic beings. Let your vehicles be filled to overflowing with the light of your presence and the light that has been built up in this, the presence of God, not only as your own temple, but wherever the banner of the temple of the presence is flown, wherever there are those raising up that banner of the temple of the presence that is ratified by their own heart and by the anointed representatives. All will be enveloped in the full charge of light that is possible for them to receive according to their attainment. I, Himalaya, commend you each one to the rolling momentum that is coming to assist you to know God.